Namaste nerds, this is Navinad, Budget Pub Stomper. Today we're going to be talking about budget staples. So I asked the guys on the Discord for ideas on a kind of relevant video to do. I had some of my own ideas, but I got a number of people that thought it would be a good idea to do a list of budget staples. So this is going to be staples that see a lot of play in a lot of different decks at $100 budget competitive. So that is $100 max, the most competitive commander deck that you can build, and with the intention of being played against other $100 max budget competitive decks. I decided to start with just the 5 colors. I thought maybe we could split this first part up into 2 videos. Wooburg top 10, or I don't know if it's a top 10, but these were the first 10 that came to mind, really. These are ones that I would say if I were building a collection, if I were starting over and building a collection of for budget competitive exactly, these are some of the first cards that I'd buy. These are cards that just go into just about, well, they go into lots of decks, assuming that I'm in the right colors, of course. This is going to be just Wooburg. I thought maybe this would take some time, and we could, if this goes over pretty well, then I could do the lands and the multicolored and the artifact cards in another video. Or you know what, if we have time, also what I thought we could do is just pop into the Discord and see what these guys have to say. I asked for a bunch of ideas, and it seems like I'm getting some. So without further ado, let's look at this in Wooburg order. So these are some of the top 10 budget staples, budget cards that I think that you ought to have in your collection. Now there's going to be some here that are not cards that everybody's universally going to want to play, but I didn't want it to just be a list of just obvious cards either. So I thought I'd spend a couple of these card slots to show you some cards maybe you haven't thought about for your builds. For instance, Abolish. So free interaction is fantastic. Competitive decks don't tend to play enough, like cEdh decks generally tend not to play enough lands to make some of these cards worth playing, a card like Abolish worth playing. But I think they're really good in exactly low color, budget, competitive decks, and I think that this is a card that nobody really knows about. But it just says you can discard a Plains card from your hand instead of paying its mana cost, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So the cast cost itself is only 3 mana. It's instant speed. It's not that much worse than a disenchant. But if you're playing in a, say, mono white deck, a lot of times you would rather discard a land than actually pay mana for a spell. Free spells are good. Hot take, I suppose. But if you haven't heard of this one, it's 28 cents, and it's something you can cast when you're tapped out. It's free interaction. Free interaction is good, and slim interaction is good. Archon of Emiria is good. Speaking of things that are good, now this is one that maybe I didn't know about this card for budget competitive, and the reason I would have thought that is because I would have been worried that a lot of the decks that you'll run into at $100 can play around this pretty easily. That maybe $100 decks aren't doing, well, they're not all doing like super broken things, and not all of them would care that much about an Archon of Emiria. Well, now that I've actually played against a good chunk of Rule of Law and Rule of Law effects like Archon of Emiria in budget competitive, I can tell you it's an absolute pain. I hate this freaking card. I hate everything about it. I hate what it represents. I hate you for liking it. No, I'm just kidding. But no, these are like really, really good, and they just shut off most, if not all, of my decks. And I'd say they do a lot. They put in a lot of work against almost all of the decks that you're likely to see. And maybe this is because the format is getting a little bit more figured out and powerful, or maybe I was just wrong, and we should have been playing these Rule of Law kind of stacks effects all along. That could be the case. But Archon of Emiria, fantastic. Even Mind Sensor is one that saw play in cEdh. We'll still see some play. I've got it in a deck. It saw a lot of play right up until the printing of Opposition Agent, which is just like a tremendous amount better than even Mind Sensor. But I still play this in like low color Temna decks, and I think at 31 cents it's an absolute obvious include for a lot of your creature based or stacks decks. Really anything that can play around it in the colors for 31 cents. I mean, it can only be so bad, and against certain decks in the meta, it just absolutely puts them out of the game, like a Magda, something like that. Mother of Runes is a little bit expensive at 382, but it's just such a powerful creature. I think that this should make its way into a lot of decks. I actually found it in. I went through my mono white deck for some ideas as to what kind of cards might make this list. And Mother of Runes, I had in my Heliod Ballista deck, my $100 Heliod Ballista deck. It's a great piece that can protect your key combo pieces. It can get your dudes through for damage. It just has a lot more utility than it might look like, and you can find it with some of the better tutors that White has access to. I can't believe I forgot the recruiter. We're going to add one to White here. White's going to cheat and get 11 because we cannot leave the recruiter of the guard that just got reprinted. Unless my computer stops working. My keyboard, I lost the battery cover to my keyboard when I was traveling. But yeah, we're back in business. So what was I talking about? Recruiter. Oh, damn it. Sorry. Okay, 535. Yeah, and so that's a little bit more. It's climbing back up. It's a little bit more than I was hoping, but still at 534, this is one of the best tutors that you have in your color identity. It's a big chunk of the budget, but depending on what you're trying to do, like if you're winning with creatures, like say creature combos that are in this toughness value, then it's probably a must run in a lot of decks. Ranger of Eos is 25 cents, and there are tons of uses for this, and I would be lying if I didn't say that putting Ranger of Eos on the list had something to do with wanting to have some 1-drops, because I just thought that made a lot of sense. Speaking of 1-drops, I just remembered another. I forgot so many cards. Okay, but let's get on with what I didn't forget. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Swords to Plowshare, Surge of Salvation, Soul Partition, Path to Exile. These are all pretty obvious, I think. Soul Partition, if you're not familiar with it, this is almost like White's version of Bounce. It's exile target. Well, I think it just is White's version of Bounce. It'll hit any non-land permanent, and you kind of bounce it. You exile it, and your opponent, you exile it, and if it's whatever permanent it is, if you're bouncing your own thing, you can just cast it for its normal cast cost. But if you bounce somebody else's thing, they have to pay an additional 2 mana to cast it. So it's kind of better bounce, right? Very good. 254. That surprises me. I guess this one's up also. Although I have to admit, I don't know what these. Why it says 254, but also says 96 cents. Oh, TCG Player has it at night. It's $1. Don't let them lie to you. What's this thing then? Oh, 704. This one's 5. Okay. Moving on. Surge of Salvation. This is one that when it was spoiled, people thought this was going to make tons of waves, even in cEdh. This is a one-man interaction. And it just says you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. So it's better against black and red, but it's not only useful against black and red, because it just says you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. This is a really good. A lot of times this is going to be effectively a counterspell for White, especially if you're in a deck that's playing to the board, playing to the battlefield. Let's get into. So basically, what do we have? We have interaction, protection, and stacks. Those are the things that are going to draw you into White. That's what White does in budget competitive. Blue, I think we all know kind of what blue does. I had to kind of work to not just make this 10 counter spells on this list. But we got a recent reprint of An Offer You Can't Refuse, which I forgot to include in my reprints in my video on the cards that won the world famous prestigious Stompy Award. An Offer You Can't Refuse ought to probably have won the Stompy. When this got reprinted, I think this was up to $5, and now it's back down goes into every budget deck at $1.43. This is a 1-mana counterspell that it's a negate. They get 2 treasures. That's not like fantastic, but whatever. It's cheaper than Swan Song and arguably just as good. A little bit less limited, but the drawback is a little bit worse. OG counterspell. Obviously, if you're playing a low color blue deck and budget, this goes in the deck. Delay. I thought about putting Arcane Denial on this in here instead of Delay. I think it's really arguable which one's better. They both are counters that will deal with creatures or non-creatures. So that's big, right? That's really important in this kind of niche, kind of quasi sub-format of $100 budget play. Because a lot of what we do in the format is trying to murder each other with creature combos. That's like a lot of what we're doing. So it's important to have answers to non-creatures, but it's also important to have answers to creatures. And oftentimes it's important to have answers to creatures while they're still on the stack. A lot of times when the creature comes down, it's too late to just, kill it. So Delay suspends it for 3 turns, and most of the time, on most of the turns of the game, even $100 like budget competitive play, the games don't go so long that how do I want to put this? Probably the majority of times when you will cast Delay, so most of your games are going to last like 4 turns, 5 turns, maybe 6 turns. Say 3 to 6 turns is going to be the vast majority, and it's going to be like even more the majority. Like the concentration is going to be on probably turn 4 or 5, 4.5, something like that. 5. I'm going to say 5. Final answer. So if you cast this Delay on turn 1, then the thing might come back. On 2, the thing might come back. On 3, it's getting less likely that the thing even comes back. So like half of the turns in your average game, if you cast Delay on a thing, you don't have to worry about that thing anymore. Plus, if you counterspell something that targets a like if you counterspell a counterspell, Delay just is 1 blue, 1 colorless counter target spell. Another nice thing that maybe is worth discussing, talking about, mentioning, is this weird little political situation that comes up with Delay. It can be the case where somebody tries to put a game-winning spell on the stack and you have Delay, and you cast the Delay, but you tell people, probably truly, like, that's my last piece of interaction, guys. I've got this one, but we have a few turns for you fuckers to figure something out. And then if you can get your opponents to actually counter it when it comes off of Delay, then you sort of get a little bit extra bang for the buck. So Arcane Denial could easily be here. People think that's card disadvantage, but they're bad at math, or they're just kind of stuck in 1v1 world. I don't know if I want to launch into a thing about that, but in terms of equity, if we broke everything down to equity and we made a toy game where the only form of equity you have are just the cards, then Arcane Denial is always going to be no worse than Counterspell in terms of equity. Again, if equity is just the cards in hand. That's a whole long tangent, and people somehow hear the argument and still disagree with it. I don't know. But moving on, because some people do not like Arcane Denial, even though I think they're wrong, I decided to put Delay on instead. Dramatic Reversal it's a ritual in a lot of decks. Not as many decks in budget competitive, honestly, but it can be a very good ritual, and I would say like exactly Simic or Simic Plus decks. Decks that have a lot of mana rocks and dorks, Dramatic Reversal can be like 2 mana, untap, 6 mana worth of things pretty easily. But what this really is one of the easiest and kind of probably best combos in the budget, well, one of the combos in the budget competitive space. It's pretty good. It requires a little bit of setup. There's lots of interaction points. But it is like 2 cards. It's an A+B with a little bit of board setup that if you've got an infinite mana outlet in your command zone or like a ton of them in your deck, then you can just win the game with it. Drift of Phantasms. So one of the best things about blue is that blue gets these transmute cards. The main 2 that you're going to see in any deck are going to be these 2 blue ones. Well, I guess there's some black ones that we'll talk about in a moment. But Drift of Phantasms is a transmute for 3 mana. So this can find your Windfall, which I didn't put on but could have put on the list. Basalt Monolith. It doesn't have to be a blue card. You can find a lot of combo pieces. You can find just some of your key pieces like your Valley Flood Caller that you may just really want. It's a 17-cent tutor. And these transmute cards really are just not bad. I mean, they're very good in budget, but they're like not that far off, in my opinion, from being able to justify play in at least low color cEdh decks. In fact, I think I might play Drift of Phantasms in my Malcolm Kettis deck, or if not, I just took it out. It's defensible there. It's at least defensible. Into the Flood Maw. This is, what can I say, the best bounce spell that we've seen probably ever. It's probably the best bounce spell that has ever been printed. You could maybe argue that, I'd say it's in the top 3, right? It's got to either be Into the Flood Maw or Cyclonic Rift, I do think that Into the Flood Maw is at least on par with Cyclonic Rift. Some decks would prefer to have Cyclonic Rift. Some decks would prefer to have Into the Flood Maw. But it's not like just obviously inferior to Cyclonic Rift, in cEdh especially. In fact, I have a deck that plays this and does not play Cyclonic Rift. But it's like Cyc Rift, Into the Flood Maw, and what's the one that you can sack lands? Chain of Vapor. Chain of Vapor, it's got a lot of political play to it, and you can use it as a ritual if you're playing a bunch of mana positive things. But in budget, for the money, bang for the buck, there is no question what the best bounce spell is. The best bounce spell in the format, quasi-format, sub-format, is Into the Flood Maw. 1 mana bounce target creature, or 1 mana return target non-creature, non-land. Let's see, return target creature an opponent controls. If you gift, then you can do target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So the kind of downsides to this are, 1, you can't bounce your own things, which can come up occasionally. But that's probably a bigger downside than the kind of alleged downside that's supposed to have, which is if you bounce a non-creature, non-land thing. So if you bounce a creature, it's just 1 mana bounce a creature. If you bounce a non-creature permanent, you have to gift a fish. And you don't have to gift it to the player that you bounce the spell or the permanent for. Like, I can bounce player A's thing and give player B the 1/1 fish. So you're just going to give the player who can take the worst advantage of a 1/1 tapped fish token. You give them the fish if you need to bounce something that isn't a creature. If you don't have to, if you're just going to bounce a creature, it's just 1 mana bounce, which is, fantastic. Muddle the Mixture, probably the best transmute card in the format. Probably the best transmute card that there's ever been, I think probably is a fair statement. If this were in any other color, people like to talk about how this is just terrible. This is terrible interaction. It's not. You're playing blue, you're spoiled. If this were in any other color, you'd play it in every deck. Like if you had a red version of this that was just red, counter target instant or sorcery spell, you would play it without the transmute. Even, you would put that in every mono red deck. Same with green, same with black. If it probably still white, even though white has a couple pieces of stack interaction, you would play this. The only reason this doesn't look like S tier interaction is because it's blue. But the fact that it has a counter spell connected to, it's like a modal spell that can counter target instant or sorcery for a reasonable rate, blue, which does just counter spells. Or for 3 mana, you can turn it into your Isochron Scepter, your Dramatic Reversal, your combo piece, your Mana Rock, your piece of removal that you need, Abrupt Decay, whatever. It's fantastic. It should be probably in just about every blue playing deck. I mean, I guess maybe that's a bit bold. Maybe it's not. I mean, it should definitely be in most budget competitive decks that run the color blue in the commander's identity. Should play Muddle the Mixture at $1.28 for sure. We've got a newcomer on the list, Valley Floodcaller. So this is it's a flash enabler what's the Born? We're just gonna call it Born Upon a Wind. But it stays in play and it's got combos. So even before people started kind of realizing that it comboed, this was seeing a lot of play. But it actually does combo with 2 different, but I guess virtually identical spells, Banishing Knack and Retraction Helix. But even just playing this card standalone, it has Flash itself, and it enables Flash in all of your non-creature spells. So if you have a way to win the game without using creatures, and you're in blue, this should probably be in your deck. Or if you have a way to make if you have an infinite mana outlet in the command zone and you're in the color blue, this should probably be in your deck. The combo is virtually free to run because both of the cards, or all 3 cards, are standalone fine. Back in the day, before we had all of these fantastic bounce spell options, we used to actually see Banishing Knack and Retraction Helix in cEdh decks. And there's interesting ways to use those. I'm going to pop one up here just so we can not have to use our collective imaginations. Banishing Knack, okay, yeah, there we go. Let's just pop it on here. Okay, so Banishing Knack says, for 1 blue, it's an instant. Till end of turn, target creature gains tap, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So we cast that spell on the Valley Floodcaller. So now every time we tap the Valley Floodcaller, we can bounce a thing. The thing that we're going to bounce is going to be a mana positive or a mana neutral piece. It can be a Tormod's Crypt or a Soul Ring or a Jeweled Amulet or a Basalt Monolith. Anything that taps for at least as much mana as it costs, or I should say anything that does not cost more mana to cast than it can produce. I think that's the succinct way to say it. You get infinite bounces with this. And so now if you're doing something with a mana positive rock, like if you're using Soul Ring in this situation, Valley Floodcaller goes infinite mana with Banishing Knack and Soul Ring. But even if you're not, even if you're just playing it in a deck that's like Marnius Calgar that has a bunch of ways to make tokens when you cast things, right? Monastery Swift Spear, whatever. If you have a Monastery Swift Spear out and Valley Floodcaller, Banishing Knack, and a 0 cost or a mana neutral or a mana positive anything, you can just keep bouncing the 0 drop or keep bouncing the Soul Ring. You tap the Soul Ring for 2, you bounce it, you recast it with the 2 floating. Tap it, bounce it, tap it, bounce it. You make an infinitely big otter. If you have a Birds of Paradise in play, for instance, you can keep untapping that. Or if you equip like a Paradise Mantle to the Valley Floodcaller, that's what I'm doing with the Marnius Calgar deck. Then in that situation, you can make your infinite mana or infinite Monastery Swift Spear 1/1 tokens, or that plus infinite card draw with Marnius. Maybe we'll take a look at the Marnius deck in not too distant future. Spell Pierce, 1 mana interaction is fantastic. We're playing in a format here where people are trying to make you dead on turn 4, sometimes even sooner, and very, very, very often, I'd say most of the time, somebody's going to try to kill you by turn 5, but they're not going to be able to do that and hold like 4 mana up, right? So these sort of what's the first one? Spell. What's the 1 blue spell? What's the original one? The OG one. What is Daze another version of? I can't think of it. But there's the white one's Mana Tithe. Anyway, if you play Spell Pierce and your opponent tries to make you dead on turn 4, it's very unlikely they're going to be able to pay an additional 2 mana. And really, like, especially in a lot of proactive decks, it's almost a non-starter. It's like, because if they were able to hold up 2 extra mana to counter your Spell Pierce when they try to kill you on turn 4, well, they would have just tried to kill you on turn 3 instead and not had the 2 additional mana. Also, when you're in a counterspell war, which happens a lot in competitive play, multiplayer competitive play especially, if there's a stack that's 5 or 6 spells deep and 2 of them are yours, you can sequence this right where you just use your counterspell, like your actual counterspell, first, and you save Spell Pierce for when everybody's tapped out. So Spell Pierce for 16 cents, it should be in probably most of your blue X decks, maybe all of them. It's really good. You know what, I like Miscast better personally, but I think it's more expensive. I think I'm not going to call, yeah, it's $1.89, but maybe it should just be out here. I like this better. Most of the targets will be the same. I'd say the vast majority of the time, you're going to want to counterspell an instant or a sorcery if you're counterspelling a non-creature spell. And 3 mana, man, that's like almost impossible for somebody to pay 3 extra mana. If you've ever seen a mystic, a fish, do I not have flippin' fish? Good lord. Yeah, we're going to do top 15 cards in blue. This was so hard, guys. Kind of bear with me. I mean, this was really, really difficult to try to narrow this down to 10 cards. But I just thought if I didn't, it would just take forever to get through the video. Mystical. What was that? No, it's Mystic. 533. That's a good chunk of money, but I mean, it's just such a powerful card. Why is it not here? Yeah, there it is. So at 533, this should still probably make a lot of your decks. It doesn't matter how many times this thing gets reprinted. It just keeps getting back up to over $5. Buy these now. This was also just a good list of cards to buy. If you're just, you want to speculate on Magic cards, I think you could do a lot worse than to buy every card on this list. Definitely financial advice. It is financial advice. That is not, you're not going to lose money on that. If you do, send me the bill. I'll pay it. And my name is Brandon Wells, and I live in Chicago. And I'll link my address where you can send that payment request in somebody else's comment section. Moving on. No, we didn't talk about negate. We talked about it. All right, negate's flipping great, and it's 11 cents. So again, it's like it takes up none of your budget, and it's a perfectly serviceable counterspell. This also is one that not that long ago was in cEdh decks. Black. Okay, so black, it was just really a matter of what I wanted to include, because there are like black things that we want to reanimate, but it's not always the same. And some decks are going to play these big like high mana value payoffs, like reanimating a Razakath or a Hoarding Broodlord, and then either using the Hoarding Broodlord to get the Saw in half, and Saw in half the Broodlord to get your this and that, and then go into a Peer into the Abyss and all of that. But I thought these were the cards. These cards right here were the ones that were, first of all, most emblematic about what you're trying to do with the color black, and that would just find their way into the most decks. So these would be the first. If I was going to spend $16.04 on budget competitive, and I didn't know what I was going to build, but I thought it might have black in it, these would be my purchases. We'll put it that way. Animate Dead, again, is kind of, a little bit more expensive than we like to be with our budget cards. It's just 1% of the deck, but this is a card that if it's in your budget deck, it's probably going to be one that you're tutoring for actively. So even though you can only have one for $4.46, you have Shred Memory to find it. You've got other tutors. Maybe you're in black blue and you've got Shred Memory and Muddle the Mixture to find it. There's going to be some. Did I not put Persist on here? Yeah. Okay. Good. So Animate Dead and Persist. These are kind of similar cards, but in budget competitive, they're not exactly the same. Because if you are, they're obviously not exactly the same. But there are certain combos in Orzhov or Rakdos. There's, I guess, just kind of a lot of combos where you need exactly Animate Dead. So even though Persist is roughly the same thing and it's a lot cheaper, Animate Dead might be necessary. You might have to play some number of Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, Necromancy, to do like the Schrodinger's Cat combo where you're blinking a thing in and out of existence, or like Abdel Adrian. If you watched my last video, I think we went over some of these combos in that video. So if not, go watch my video on the on how to murder people, how people get murdered in budget competitive, part 2, Budget Boogaloo. I believe that's the name. If not, it should be. Animate Dead with World Gorger Dragon goes infinite. Persist with World Gorger Dragon probably loses the game. So don't use Persist in your World Gorger loops. Not gonna work. Animate Dead is it's a $4.46 piece that I'd feel perfectly reasonable telling you, if you're gonna play black and $100 competitive, you should buy it. You should just buy it. It's probably not gonna go lower, so just go buy these. Buried Alive, 72 cents. This is fresh off of a reprint. It just dropped pretty hard, and I'm super happy that it did. I did list this in the Stompy Awards as one of the best reprints we got last year. Demure Machinations is another one of these Shred Memory and what's the other one? Muddle the Mixture effects that we can use to find specific cast cost things like Buried Alive. So Demure Machinations can find Buried Alive, or it can play Necromancy. Necromancy is probably as important as Animate Dead in most of these decks. And most of these decks that use these as a combo piece, you'll probably want to play both, or at least whichever two are the cheapest. So if you have Buried Alive and you draw your Dimir Machinations, you can turn it into Necromancy. Or if you draw your Necromancy and your Dimir Machinations, you can turn Machinations into Buried Alive, and then you've just got an A plus B combo. Well, plus add Shred Memory in there, and you've got Animate Dead and Unmarked Grave. So this is a way to kind of layer your combo so that you can have easier and more consistent access to your A's and your B's through the use of a C that can be either an A or B. You see? Wishclaw Talisman also got reprinted not so long ago. $1.62. Yeah, definitely buy this. If you're going to play black, you're going to put this in most of your budget decks. Imp's Mischief, it's starting to crawl up a little bit again, but still $2. This was like $20 and then $12 for the longest time. It's just a good piece of black interaction, and it's stack interaction. And I would play this in any budget mono black deck. It sees play even in mono black cEdh decks. I think even in Rakdos, you play it, you just jam it. I think you have to be in, well, probably just, maybe you don't play it in Golgari, but, I mean, you don't play it in Dimir, but I digress. If you're playing a low color black deck, there's a good chance you want this. And if you're playing a mono color black deck, then it's about 100% that you want this. It's you can counter target, no, don't counter target spell. Counter target counter spell with it, right? It's you can change the target of a target spell with a single target. A counter spell has a single target, so they're going to counter spell your Animate Dead. And you cast Imp's Mischief, and you say, how about I change the target of your counter spell to target my Imp's Mischief instead? In which case, Imp's Mischief gets countered, which means the effect never happens in the first place, and we start like a grandfather paradox, an infinite time wrinkle, probably the universe implodes or something. No, what happens is the counterspell loses. So you cast Animate Dead on World Gorger Dragon. You're going to win the game with infinite mana. And somebody casts Counterspell. And you cast Imp's Mischief. And you redirect the target of Counterspell to the Imp's Mischief. So the Imp's Mischief gets countered instead of the Animate Dead, which does seem a little paradoxical and weird, but that's a conversation for another day. Honestly, that's a conversation for another person. I'm not into it. It hurts my brain. Fatal Push, $1.83, one of the best pieces of removal in Mono Black, and Mono Black's pretty good at removal, so that's high praise indeed. Lively Dirge, speaking of high praise, I think this is one of the best cards that was printed last year. It's definitely one of the best cards for our format. I think it's one of the best cards probably Black got even for cEdh last year. This card does a lot. It really doesn't read that good, especially when you start adding up the mana. But when you compare it to other cards that are just very good, it ends up being, well, great. For 83 cents, this will, for 3 mana, this will be another copy of Entomb or Buried Alive, where you can put your Razakath in the bin, or you can put your Hoarding Broodlord, or your whatever it is. The red dragon I just talked about for 15 minutes, that fucking thing. World Gorger Dragon. For 3 mana, it'll be the A to your A plus B. But for 5 mana, you can search your library for a card and put it in the graveyard, but then put it into play as long as its mana value is 4 or less. And you don't have to do it exactly that way. So it's 2 mana base cost, but you have to pay at least one of these spree, but it's at least one or 2 of the spree cost. If you pay 1 spree, you can just entomb a card. Does it have to be a creature? It does not. So it can be anything. You can use it for Underworld Breach stuff, whatever. For 2 mana, return up to 2 creature cards with total converted mana cost 4 or less from your graveyard back into play. So the use case I always think of for this is if you're playing Grixis Malcolm. If you're playing a red, black, blue deck with Malcolm at the helm and Glinthorn Buccaneer in the 99, for 5 mana, you can do all of this at once. You can tutor your Glinthorn Buccaneer into the graveyard, but then take it from the graveyard and put it directly into play. So that's 5 mana, tutor a thing and put it into play. What's that sound like? Bring to Light? Well, we played Bring to Light. Finale of Devastation, same exact rate, right? Glinthorn Buccaneer costs 3 mana, so to finale it into play, it costs 5 mana. Same with Lively Dirge, 5 mana, right into play. And in fact, if you're bringing something that has a converted mana cost of 4 mana into play, it's actually cheaper to tutor it and put it into the battlefield with Lively Dirge than it would be with Finale of Devastation. So it's good. It's a great card. Did I go through all of these? I'm losing my voice. Unmarked Grave, yeah, I think we talked about them all. Shred Memory also does have a little bit of extra text, like a lot of the some of the transmutes, like the Dimir Machination. Honestly, this is like 99, man, almost 100% of the time. This is just a 3 mana tutor spell to find something that costs 3 mana. That's just what the card is. It's what it does. That's pretty true also of Drift of Phantasms. But cards like Muddle the Mixture and Shred Memory, you'll actually cast these occasionally. I've cast both of these. Well, I've cast Muddle lots. But I have actually used Shred Memory to remove up to, because it has text on it, for 2 mana instant speed, remove up to 4 target cards in a single graveyard from the game. That can just read, target opponent cannot win the game. I mean, it can easily read target opponent can't win the game this turn, but sometimes it can just read target opponent can no longer win the game. If they're playing a reanimator strategy and they kind of got greedy and they buried alive all of their targets into the bin at once, you can wipe them all out at the same shot, or with the same shot, or at the same time. And also this will work on Underworld Breach lines. There's tons you can do with this. Most of the time, you're going to transmute it and you're going to find your Animate Dead or your Persist or your whatever. But some of the time, you can cast it and it'll act as a counter spell at worst for your opponent who's trying to do degenerate graveyard things. And there's lots of that. Moving on to red, I think it's good I only did 10, and I think it's good I stuck to Wooburg. Let's see how we're doing on time. Oh my god, it's way good I did. Braid, fantastic. Destroy target thing that is, it deals 3 damage or destroys an artifact. It's 11 cents, put this in every red deck. Gamble, it's the best tutor red has access to, more or less. It's creeping back up, it's $5.12, but it gets a pass because it's like super good. 1 red mana, tutor to hand. Yeah, sometimes it backfires. You're just not going to win every game. It's a chance you've got to take. And it's not like you lose if you get the idea. Infernal Plunge is one of the best rituals in the game. It's not obviously as good as Dark Ritual, which I pardon my French. We are doing Dark Ritual has got to be on this list. That was a huge nonsensical miss. There we go. It was there all the while. Top 12 cards. Gamble, Infernal Plunge, which is just worse Dark Ritual and is still good enough in many lists. Lightning Bolt, staple, sees a lot of play in our format and even cEdh. Same with Red Elemental Blast. Reverberate is also counter target, counter spell, or copy target tutor. This does a lot. You can even just you can even copy one of your own things. Maybe you have 2 things you want to abrade. So you cast a Braid and you reverberate it. Or maybe you have a 2-card creature combo and you cast Lively Dirge and you reverberate. I don't know. There's lots and lots of ways to use it. Rite of Flame at 291 was close to coming off the list, but I do find myself jamming this in a lot of decks. Mana acceleration is so paramount. It's so key. And if you're not in green and you are on a budget, you've got to get it somewhere. And so cards like Rite of Flame and Simian Spirit Guide, which is only $1.25. Even these guys, these mana batteries, Strike It Rich, I play all the time. Skirk Prospector is in probably the majority of decks that I play that have the color of red. Like, it's really, really good. Even without other goblins. But sometimes you'll have other goblins. Or sometimes you'll have other goblins and you'll have a Ranger of Eos. And you'll be like, what do I want to get? You'll get Mother of Runes and Skirk Prospector. That's why they're on the list. I guess that's about all we're going to say about that. Mostly because we're on a time crunch. But red's pretty self-explanatory. It's, you got a couple of tutors. You've got like Goblin tutors and Gamble. Small creature tutors like the other Recruiter. Should I put him on here? I didn't cheat for red yet. Imperial Recruiter, $8. That's a bit much. Kiki Jiki, a nasty combo piece. It can even be used for value. There we go, 621. Gonna cheat that way. And should we get a Kiki bottom? Buy these cards. These are all cards you should buy. Archdruid Charm is another one that, yes, it's $5.62. If I didn't mention, we're moving on to green. Catch up, Mustard. Archdruid's Charm, when I saw this card spoiled, I was like, wow, it does so much, but it is green, green, green. How good is this going to be? And the answer is it's fucking bonkers. I don't know, like, I seem to be, maybe I'm taking crazy pills. I seem to be the only one that sees this. I mean, there's lots of people that see that it's okay, or yeah, that's good. But it's like really hard to convince people to try this. But I tried it, and I'll never not play it again in any low color green deck. It's like green, 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 and what's the text? It's like choose one, anything you want. It's like choose one of these things, and then it just says anything you want. I mean, what are the chances that you're in a situation where you don't want to search for a creature card? Or put a land card, any land card, from your library directly into play? Or murder a creature, put a +1 counter on your creature first, and then it deals its damage. It bites, it doesn't fight, it bites. So put a +1 counter on your dude, murder another dude with it. Or exile, not destroy, but exile target artifact or enchantment. So like how many times do you draw a card off the deck and you're like, oh damn, I didn't want to find a creature, get a land from my deck into play, or murder somebody else's creature while buffing my own, and I also have no artifacts that I would like to exile, and there's no enchantment that I would rather weren't here. I mean, it's just like it's freaking amazing. The card is amazing. So even though it's $5.62, and even though our decks are $100, it makes my list. This is in my Selvala deck, and it's in my Minkskin Boo list. 2-color decks, 1 color. Like if you're a monocolor or 2-color, I think you play this. In cEdh even. Like in cEdh even. In fact, it's in my Teamer, my like main go-to deck, my Teamer Pirates. Autumn's Veil, absolute staple. This is like the closest thing you're going to get to an affordable green counterspell. It counters target counterspell is basically, and it gives hexproof. It's, read the card. We're running out of time here, guys. You're going to have to use your eyeballs. Okay. Spells you control can't be countered by blue or black spells this turn, and creatures you control can't be the target of blue or black spells this turn. 1 green. It gets no better. Well, yeah, it does. Veil of Summer is 100% better. But that's a little bit pricey. Carpet of Flowers, on the other hand, look, this is pretty good in cEdh. I play it in some decks. It's not always good in cEdh. But, and I can't say that it's always going to be good in budget. But it is almost always going to be good in budget. It's very rare that you go up against a pod of 0 blue players, and when you run into a blue player, they are playing islands, right? Like, you don't always have that in cEdh. Like, you can go up against a 3-color blue deck in cEdh, and it's turn 4, and they haven't put a single fucking island in play. I've done it. I've been there. That's not going to happen in budget. They have to play islands. You just can't afford to put, like, in a 2-color deck, a monocolor deck, a 2-color deck, a 3-color deck with blue. You're going to see, like, 9 islands in it. This thing's going to pay dividends, and if you're in a pod with a couple of blue players, like, it's going to be better Soul Ring a lot of the time. So, yeah, $2.92. It's a bit much. It's worth it. Buy it. Collector Oof, it's one of the reasons that some decks just want to play green. Like, it's some strategies. Like, if you're playing stacks, you can do white-black, you can do white-green, you can do green-black. But green is in there because of, like, primarily Collector Oof, and Manglehorn, which was also left. No, I didn't leave this off the list. I mean, I did, but I did it on purpose because I was trying to find 10, but since all these other fuckers get 12. Oh, man, blue got 13. Blue, why is blue always like that, Oh, Banishing Knack doesn't count. You'll only want that if you get the Valley Flood Caller and have a good way to use it. I mean, it's not bad otherwise. God, we already talked about that card. Sorry. Manglehorn, busted. The card's busted. It's not as good as it was in cEdh a while ago, before Dockside Extortionist was banned. But look, guys, this saw play in a lot of cEdh decks before Dockside was ever even printed. This was like a staple back in the day. And it's the staple of our format. Like, this is really, really good at slowing your opponents down. It blows up a thing. So when you cast this, you get to blow up an artifact. And then all of your opponent's artifacts enter the battlefield tapped. And a lot of times that is a tempo swing that your opponents are going to have a hard time overcoming. I only put Llanowar Elves on. I mean, obviously, this could just as easily be the other green and add green elves. But I guess there's one that... Fyndhorn Elf, I think, is like $1. But other than that, I mean, still, it's a staple. You play it. Dorks are like the best thing green's got going, especially in budget. Like, 1 mana dorks are a big pull into the green color, tree color, into the green color, into the green color, into the color green, whatever, into green. Llanowar Elves are just emblematic. I don't know. They're the same as all the other ones. Play them all. I just didn't want to waste 4 slots on this guy. I mean, I kind of still did, because I put Elves of Deep Shadow. That's the best one, because that taps for black when you only have green. That's better than tapping for green when you already have green, right? Avacyn's Pilgrim was on here at first, but the color white just tends to not be as good as the color black. But since we're cheating and going up to 13 on all these others, Avacyn's Pilgrim can make the list. There we go. Plus, you know, the Archdruid's Charm is sort of a speculation. I'm telling you to buy this before it's $10. Mark my fucking words. This will be $10. I mean, I'm being like, I'm way lowballing what this is going to be. If this doesn't get a series of reprints, this goes through the roof, 100%. People are going to start trying it, and then when they do, they're going to have the same experience that I have with it every time I draw it. It's going to go up. But it also is just worth $5.62 in a lot of decks. If you're playing a green and white deck, you should play Avacyn's Pilgrim, so I guess that kind of makes it a staple. Collector Oof single-handedly shuts down entire decks and strategies for 2 mana. It's only $2.61. Also got reprinted, I think, last year. Eldritch Evolution is $3.49. That's kind of back on it's climbing back up. That dropped down a good bit too. Summoner's Pact, 0 mana. Now, look, I know what you're thinking. It's not a 0 mana tutor because you have to pay 4 mana next turn. But most of the time when you're using a Summoner's Pact, the idea is you're using it on the turn that you're trying to win the game. So it is just 0 mana. It's like one of the best... I don't know. It immediately gets jammed into every green deck that I play if it's got exactly creature. I was going to say if it's got creature combos, but I think that's literally all green decks. So it goes in. You're going to play this. Buy this. Nature's Claim. This was a cEdh staple not that long ago until like Otawara and Boseiju and all those got printed. Not as good as those, but it's absolutely 89 cents. It's definitely that good. Shared Summons, 5 mana, 87 cents, instant speed, find your creature combo, untap and win the game. That's what this is. It finds 2, not 1, 2 creatures at instant speed, and most of your combos that you're going to play in budget competitive are going to be 2-card combos. So this is like basically a 1-card win assembler. People sometimes call this, like Shared Summons is a 1-card win. In most decks that play it, it's going to be a 1-card win condition. I think that's all the things, guys. We all know what Eternal Witness is. I wanted to put Noxious Revival because this was Noxious Revival was reprinted and very cheap, and it's still in my budget binder. But because I'm like the god of speculation, every time I buy something, it goes up. I'm just kidding. That's not at all the case. Noxious. Yeah, it's like $5. Is it worth it? I don't know. It's like, if there were no other version of this effect, this is the best one. But if there were no other version of it, I'd say maybe it is worth the $5. But in a lot of decks, I think it's not, because Ewit is only $1.14, and I don't think Noxious Revival is that much better than Regrowth. I think it's better if it's a budgetless situation, you're gonna play the Noxious. But when Regrowth is 2-hand instead of on top of your library, and it's 39 cents instead of $5, I think we play Regrowth. I think this is a more honest way to look at what a budget staple should be. Regrowth, you're everything a budget staple should be. Thank you. Thanks for watching, guys. I think I have completely evaporated my voice, so that means that it is time to stop talking. I thought that I might have time to go through all of the things that these guys recommended. Mole Drifter, I'm glad I didn't now, Hard Nuts. Windfall, yep. March, yep. Okay, I'm trying to read backwards. Fire Covenant, yep, that's definitely going to make the list, but not today. Oh, Noxious Revival, yeah, it's too much. Court of Calling, I forgot. Muddle the Mixture, most of this is probably going to be the same. Oh, what do we have here? Strict Serenade, forgot it. Daze, forgot it. Volatile Stormdrake, I thought of it. I thought it doesn't see as much play as the other ones that I listed. Into the Flood Maul, Curiosity could arguably be on there. Offer, got it. High Fate Trickster, I'm not sure that is a staple, although it could end up being one. Savine's Reclamation, yep, forgot it. That should be on the list. Okay, Capsize, yeah, I play Capsize in kind of a lot of the decks for kind of interesting reasons that I guess I would have gotten into 20 minutes ago. But now it's 50 minutes and 35 seconds. I can't believe it. Okay, thank you for watching to the end. If you got to the end of this video, let me know. I'll send you a plane ticket. I'll fly you in, and I will make out with you. Yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Until next time, may all your YouTube video content creators offer to make out with you. May all your outs be live. May all the girls you loved before love you again. And word to your stepsister. Word to your stepsisters. Word to your stepfathers. I'm sure I have not hit that one yet. Not your stepfather. Obviously, I'd never hit your stepfather. That's crazy. Namaste, guys. Namaste, nerds. Namaste, homies. Until next week.